fine October morning. And today's Politics of the Progressive Era brought to us by tea, warm, tasty, and caffeinated. All of this politically, all of this movement really starts with muckrakers. And muckrakers are journalists. And certainly, while there's these journalists here, they look like fine gentlemen sitting around having a good time. Muckrakers are not just reporting news that people know about, not just reporting entertainment. Muckrakers are really out to expose dirt. Muck is mud, something dirty, and raking is really dragging it to the surface. So instead of these journalists that are sitting around having a good time, we have people that are investigating, going undercover perhaps, to dig up information about what's really going on in America. And what they're doing is publishing books, publishing newspaper articles that tell the public, that tell America, what are the problems. They might be exposing corruption. In this cartoon here, we have this fat, money-headed man who's supposed to be Boss Tweed. He's a politician in New York City. Exposing corruption, how politicians aren't actually looking out for the common people, that they're out to enrich themselves and support business. They're dragging up information on drugs, on food. You have these cough drops, toothache drops that are containing cocaine that they're giving to children, and looking at the impact of these drugs on the population. That food is being produced that has rats in it, that has old, moldy food ground up with good stuff. And they're publishing books and reports on this. They're showing photographs, taking photographs of children that are working, showing the conditions that they work in, how many children are working, 4-year-olds that are picking cranberries, children that are working in mines, showing the public what life as a child is like today, what working conditions are like in factories, how cramped and crowded it is, how dangerous it can be for women, for men that are working in these environments. So muckrakers are able to show the public what life is like, and in many cases, how life is really bad in America. And you have people like Ida Tarbell, who is able to investigate Standard Oil, investigate John D. Rockefeller, and show that he has a monopoly and he's eliminating competition, making life unfair, and it's hurting Americans in general. He's raking up this information. She publishes a book which starts the wheels that result in Standard Oil being taken out by the government. You have people like Upton Sinclair, who publishes The Jungle, this disgusting work on showing what the meatpacking industry is like in America, in Chicago. And with these muckrakers, what happens is you have people, perhaps they realize, like, oh, maybe my job is bad. Maybe I see those kids working. But it shows that it's a widespread problem. It's not just an issue that perhaps people think is limited to themselves. And once this realization, once this information gets out, that's what starts getting people to work together and say, hold on, what is going on in America? How can we make changes that can reduce or eliminate these problems? So muckrakers are really what jumpstarts and what unites a lot of people. And certainly people uniting is important, but without support, without accountability for government, people can talk all they want, but it doesn't matter if politicians don't listen. So another big change is this idea of direct democracy, of people having a say and having that say mean something. So this is kind of returning, or in some cases, some people argue it's really the beginning of it. You have this cartoon here of this little politician standing on a man's thumb saying, "You are a great big ignoramus, and I refuse to obey you. I don't care how you vote." Because in theory, voting should be what determines politicians and what they're doing. However, the reality is not true. You have a lot of corruption in government that even if people are angry at their politicians, it doesn't mean anything. So You have this idea of politicians not caring what the voters think, and that's starting to be eliminated for a number of reasons. One of this is this idea of secret voting. Instead of in the early days of voting, you would vote in front of everyone. People would know what you thought and what you believed and who you wanted to lead you. So secretive voting begins, and now no one knows how you're voting or what you want, which allows people to be honest and really vote in the way that they believe. We also have a few things that are put into place. One of them is initiative. An initiative is if you get a number of votes, not even votes, if you get a number of signatures as a citizen, you say, I see an issue, I see a problem, and I want the government to address it. And with initiative, you get people together, sign a form, and if you have enough signatures, then what it shows is the government is that you have a lot of people that see this as a problem and that you need to address it. So even today, the White House has to respond to a petition that says, "Hey, White House, we all are recognizing this as a problem. Please respond." If they get to a certain number of signatures. So this allows grassroots organizations to speak to the government and say, look at all these people that are seeing this as a problem. Not only are signatures being gathered, but you have these referendums which are coming into play. And a referendum is when citizens see something that they want to change and they put together a ballot measure. And with a ballot measure, what it does is it presents an issue to the public and allows them to vote on it. So even if politicians are not acting, a referendum allows citizens to act or force the government to act. So, for example, in Massachusetts last year, the idea of legalizing marijuana was put towards the general citizens. And even though the government was not in support of this measure, after the vote, it showed that citizens wanted legalization of marijuana in Massachusetts. Thus, the government had to act and move to legalize marijuana. So, this referendum allows citizens to change laws, even if the government is unwilling to. And finally, we have a recall, which, if those politicians continuously disregard, don't listen to what voters want, what voters think, what can happen is a recall. And states start to put these into place where a special election can occur and voters can say, this politician has listened to us so little, has disregarded us, has gone against our wishes so much that we will take them out of office. So instead of waiting till the next election, a recall vote can be put in which case a governor, a senator, a politician can be taken out of office and replaced with someone new. So this really starts to get politicians to be honest of saying, all right, I've not been listening to people all this time, but now I can lose my job if I don't. Even if I don't listen to them, you can have a referendum and the people can vote on something anyways, even if I don't support it. So all of these things really help grassroots movements fight for, especially in the progressive era, a lot of changes that they see as necessary. And another huge thing is you have the direct election of senators. Now, up until this point, before the 17th Amendment, you have senators appointed by state legislature. So while you might be voting for people in your state, those people pick the two people that will be the senators in Washington. Now, after this, every 6 years, senators are elected in each state, and the people are the ones that vote for them. So nationally, now the people representing each state, citizens know that they are out for their best interests, and if not, you can vote them out of office. Whereas before, the senators, they weren't necessarily held accountable to the people because people didn't vote for them. Fellow politicians did. So the direct election of senators allows nationally the wishes of individual states to be voiced and the concerns of individual states and citizens to be voiced at a national level. Now, in that national level, we have some politicians that are starting, and especially the presidents that are starting to listen to what is happening in these small communities that are happening to these in these little areas, and they're supporting that agenda nationwide. And the first progressive president would be Teddy Roosevelt, who, if you're looking at this photograph, definitely looks like he's going to steal your girl. And if he does, he might laugh a lot about it, and then be like, "No, seriously though, watch out. Look at this mustache. He does have a fantastic mustache." So Teddy Roosevelt, first progressive president, he has a lot of things that he's doing to support the progressive ideas, including number one, taking down trusts and monopolies. He sees himself as a trust buster. While he recognizes the importance of business, especially for the country to grow and develop, he does want to see competition. He wants to see fair competition for businesses. And if there's one that is taking all of the money, all the profits in one area, he needs to take it down. He also is looking at government corruption. He sees that if the people don't respect their politicians, they're going to lose interest, and the structure that is meant to support people can't. So he wants to remove corrupt officials from office. He's also looking at this idea of pure food and drugs. He sees these reports that muckrakers are making about what people are eating, and moves to create legislation nationwide that protects people from drugs that are dangerous and food that is going to cause sickness and illness and disease. And one of his biggest legacies throughout history is this idea of conservation. And Roosevelt's a kind of interesting guy. He's famous for being a big game hunter. He goes to Africa, he shoots large animals. But he also is recognizing that without the environment where these animals live, they're all going to be dead. And he sees throughout the country mining is destroying landscapes. People are chopping down trees without replacing them. And he sees that a change needs to happen. He visits California, he goes to Wyoming, and he sees these parts of the country that are untouched that need to be protected. And he really becomes a champion for the environment, and popularized in one story where he's hunting on a hunting trip, and a black bear is injured, and it's tied up in a rope, and his friends say, "Shoot it," and he says, "No, that's not fair, that's not sporting." And this cartoon here shows that event. It makes this bear very cute and small, and him refusing to shoot it. It is later shot, spoiler alert, but he doesn't do it. And the teddy bear, people are so struck by this image of Theodore Roosevelt not shooting a bear that the teddy bear becomes famous and is named after him in this idea that he wants to protect this bear. And now, if you have a teddy bear, it's named after Theodore Roosevelt. After Roosevelt, we have our friend Taft, who becomes president, only person to become president and Supreme Court justice. And Taft continues Roosevelt's mission to support progressive ideas. While Roosevelt had some success going against trusts, Taft, in fact, takes down Rockefeller. He takes down Standard Oil. So he, in fact, is quite accomplished in taking out trusts. He's also supporting immigrants. There's a proposal that there should be literacy tests that he shoots down because he wants open immigration and not to discriminate. Granted, as I said in the beginning, not all of the movements are successful. They need support from the government to get a lot of success. And one area is you have a large movement by African Americans saying we have a lot of issues in our communities. In the South, we have Jim Crow laws that are legalized discrimination. And while there's certainly a movement, you have these people are happy. W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, fighting for equality, fighting for against discrimination. Taft actually approves legislation that allows African American officials to be removed from office if white people are not happy with their job. So it essentially is just allowing any black official to be taken out of office um, in public positions if white people are racist, essentially. So it's not going to be for another 60 years that really the civil rights movement gains traction, because until then, there isn't this great support from the political leaders of our country. So we have a lot of desire for change when it comes to civil rights in America at this time, but really the product, the result of their work is kind of not going to come to fruition for another 50 or 60 years. Woodrow Wilson comes into office after Taft, and certainly we'll be talking about World War One. So he has a tumultuous time in office, but progressively, he under him we have prohibition. That alcohol is seen as this great evil in America that's causing disruption of families and relationships, and the sale and production of it is outlawed, and consumption. Um, you also have the women gaining the right to vote. This long movement that's mostly starting in the 1840s is finally a victory for women. That the 19th Amendment comes along and they're able to gain that right to vote. And now you have 50% of the population allowing to have their opinions heard. And as we see with movements of the people politically, if you have that strength, then you can see changes happen. And women are able now to voice their concerns and opinions in the ballot box, which forces politicians to listen to them and represent them.